afternoon, good evening, good morning, all of the above to everybody. We'll just go ahead and give everyone a chance here to join up, and then we'll kick off here in just a few minutes, like usual. Okay, I'll go ahead and kick off here. So Josh, your question is, how do you rename a database connection? I think you have to do that in the database. Let's see. So let's see where database connections are. System integrations, databases, and I will create a new connection against my local. And database name is what? Can't remember what my local's database name is. Current database is local 1234. Alrighty, so let's create our connection here. All right, there's new local connection. And if we right click, manage, edit. Well, we should allow you to do this, but we don't. So this is a folder. So I'm in here and I can steal the folder ID from the URL. And so what I can do is write a query. So I know it's a folder. So if I come to my designer folder, other query editor, I can query the entity folder table from entity underscore folder, where folder underscore ID equals that ID that I stole from the URL. And then if I look, the property I'm looking for is entity name, which will be new local connection. And so I can just run an update statement. So I can update entity folder, and I can set entity name equal to test123 4. There you go, test1234 with the folder ID equals. I can run that. I can run this. Now, I don't expect, though it might be, let's see here, if I come back to databases, it's actually showing me test1234 there, but not in the folder tree, I bet. Isn't that confusing? And I will restart Service Host Manager since I made a change to the database that didn't go through our service layer.
And will that rename the queries that are everywhere else in flows already to the correct path on it? Will that all, or do I have to go reset all of the queries that I use?
What path are you referring to there specifically?
Like, so like if I have like select get all records from a table.
Yeah.
So I have to go refresh all of those, or does that sort of happen?
Well, those have those names should be the name you gave the query itself, right? So you'd
right, it would still have it's all by the folder, it's all by the flow ID anyway, right? So sort of just
Yeah, because I don't think it tells you the connection name on the step. Let's just look. We can look at that really quick. Let's answer. I don't know the answer, so let's figure it out. So there we go. There's test 1, 2, 3, 4. So let me just give myself a space to work with here. And let's go into test 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's create a table definition. So we'll just connect to the account table here. Again, I'm just connecting to my local just to because it's easy. So I'm going to add this. So now the name of this thing is going to be DBO entity account. So if we come into this folder here, and let's call it connection rename questions. And let's create a flow. And let's look here. So steps, integration, and database. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's renamed there. And then in here, the actual table, like the get all step, that name is from the table. So that wouldn't change. So this changes here. But if you looked at like get all, I don't think it shows you the connection really, does it? Unless you changed it. So select type, that's there. And then you can override. And then connection name is test 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, it updates everything. Because really, and you can actually move these things around. So the way this step works is this entity account get step, it actually knows what it's, these database folders are very special. So this step or this integration knows that it's in this 1, 2, 3 folder. And so it says, hey, what folder am I in? Okay, make the connection using with that folder. And then so that theoretically you could move this from folder to folder, and you could have different connections. But the object always uses the parent connection, the parent folder's connection context when making a connection.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, Alex, what you got, man? I don't see any other questions yet, so feel free to go for it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a few questions. Give me just 1 second. I'm trying to post them properly. Report. Sorry. Did this post enter? Did the chat reflect the questions? Can you see the questions? Or
All right, here we go. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, here we go. All right, question 1. Can you please remind me how to do the following? I have a flow that creates process flows and puts them in a normal folder. I'd like to be able to edit a created flow once it has been done, change some of its values, and save it. Okay, so let's come back here. Just say process folder questions. All right, so I'm going to create a flow execution extension here called test1 with a property called string1. All right, and then I'm going to add a folder here to hold my actual process folders called data. All right, and then I'm going to build my flow. So create flow. And in this flow, I'll just put 2 steps in here, setup process folder. And I will drag over a show form step. And put a single button on this. And in process folder, I'll go ahead and say, put their folders in the data folder, set some constant strings for description and folder name. And turn this into an assignment. And assign this to administrators. And just put constant garbage text for the name and the action name. All right, and go ahead and save and close this.
Sorry, I think that I may not have expressed the question properly. Imagine that you already have the record in the data folder.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
Now,
No, I understand.
Now you want to edit that record.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just getting testable here so we can walk through it. So I'm gonna run that flow. And then it's gonna create a folder and it's gonna give me my assignment. So if I come and look at data, I now have my folder, right? And so what we need to do is create, now I have an action here called ASDF, but that's the assignment. So let's complete this assignment. And now I have no actions here. It's just a normal folder. So in my test1 configuration folder, oh crap, I didn't do this right. Sorry, I missed something. Let me select my extension object. So I have to select an extension type to be able to do this. So here's my type I created named test1. And it doesn't, is it gonna blow up if I don't do build data? So let's do build data and leave everything. Constant, is that better? There you go, whatever. Just to get that in there. Turn some stuff off. My local is struggling today. Too many PowerPoints. All right, and let me run my flow again. In my other window, I'm gonna start closing some things here.
That's for your server. But you're running everything on your machine?
Yeah, correct. This is just on my local right now. And my laptop is going nuts right now. So I will start closing some tabs out here. Bear with me just a minute.
If it helps, you can take control of mine.
No, it's okay. So here we go. Here's data, and here's number 2. So I'm going to get rid of my assignment, be back in the same state. Nothing. So what I have to do is I have this data object. I need to add entity actions to be able to interact with it. So I'm in the test1 configuration folder, which I get when I create my data type. I'm going to come to user action and select create user action and call this thing edit after complete, right? Now this thing is a entity action flow. So if we look at Data Explorer, it gives us the folder and our flow extension data test1 in the flow, right? So I'll create a form here. I'm going to do 2 things. Create a form, and I'm going to use a step called save entities. Just this, I just prefer this step here. So I'm going to create my form. I'm going to put a single text box on this form with some garbage text as the input name and a button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the value of the string value from that extension object. So flow extension data, str1, which is currently like null or empty. And then on the output, I'm going to select change value, and I'm going to accept select flow extension data, str1. So whatever value the user enters into this form will map to that property on that object. And then in save entities, I'll search for test1, find my test1 type, and I'll pass in the entire flow extension data right here. Now that I have this fully configured, I can save this. I can come back to my data folder. I can right click here, and there's a new action in the context menu called edit after complete. I can run that, and I can change this to some garbage text and submit. And now I have a user interaction that I can use to touch the existing data.
Perfect. Perfect.
And then you can make this, then the next question, which you're probably not thinking to ask yet, but is how do I hide this in certain situations? And there's things, and I'll just point you to the documentation. Then you start creating action visibility rules, and you say, only show this if it's closed, or only show this if it's an administrator. And now you can completely control what shows up in that list by using the rule engine to create these action visibility rules. And then every time you right click, it'll show that it'll prompt
And
you out.
probably with the state of that process.
Exactly
right.
right.
We should not be editing
You bet.
it.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right,
Perfect.
question 2. How do I refresh what a data repeater shows after a record was edited individually? I'm passing just a record to the editing flow, and I know the changes are made, only they are not shown in the data repeater. Actually, if I create a new record in the data repeater using the technique you showed me yesterday, it does refresh. Is this different than what I was showing you yesterday?
Oh, no. Actually, it's the next elaboration, because what you showed me yesterday was to create a new record.
Mm-hmm.
Now I edit also. I give the user the ability to edit the record,
Right.
which it's working. The record is edited, but the data repeater doesn't show the additions until a new record is done. It's added.
Okay.
Sorry, that it may be useful if you just saw it. If you want to see it, I can show it to you in a second.
So do you have like a button on your data repeater to say edit this one, something like that?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It should be the same. I'm going to use the example I built yesterday. I think I still have it here. Data repeater question. So let me run our main flow here.
Yeah. I think that the biggest between one model and the other is when you create a new record, you're passing the entire data repeater.
Yeah.
And you put it back, the data repeater widget in the form shows the new values.
Yep.
When I am editing a record, I'm just passing that particular record, not the entire data repeater structure. Right. Because otherwise I'd have to pass that, and presumably the line item that I'm trying to edit, and I don't know how to.
I still think we pass the whole list back when we do this. Corey, do you know, just off the top of your head, if I have a sub dialog button on a data repeater and I need to update the data in the data repeater, I still probably just edit that one item. I pass in the selected item and the list, update the item in the list, and pass the whole list out, something like that. You know?
I don't think that's a good way to go about it. If you can set a refresh event to happen on data repeater change.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that?
So this thing is going to be edit this record, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to create a new flow here called edit
it's hard to...
individual record. I think we can use our same form. Let's look at this form. Form 1. Nope, not form 1. Add new account. This should have like a text box. Okay, there's our new email. Okay. So we can definitely pass, let's call this thing selected record. And this will be account. Oops. All right. And then we can then map selected account's email address to our form. So selected record dot email address. All right, and I'm just gonna save this and map in. This will be form input data, right? Which will be form data dot email. Oh no, just form data, right? Yeah, this is gonna be just form data. Okay. Let me save this, and to make it easier, I'm just gonna stay in here, but come into my flow and run the main flow here. Okay, so I have edit this record. So if I hit edit this record, there's admin. But now if I say admin1, nothing changes. And this is probably where we're at right now, right?
Gotcha. Okay. For here, you could pass as an output of the subdialog
Mm-hmm.
the form data back.
Just that one object?
Yep.
So this is edited, edited account or whatever, right? Type account. Okay. And then I'll pass the account selected record in to change value on the output of my step, right? So selected record dot email address. Okay. Now I need to do something with
The flow outputs.
so output. I'm going to name this thing form data.
Yes.
Okay. Refresh all components I don't want to do. Hey, I'm sorry, everyone. Just one moment.
I hit that button and didn't make a difference for me. Not the button, the checkbox.
To refresh all form components using that name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very specific behavior for like when you're
Okay.
trying to update multiple areas within your form that are using the same label for data that you're passing around your form.
Mhm.
So there's admin1, wonderful. All right, let's walk back through that. What did we do? We put a subdialog flow on our repeater so that now it shows up on each repeater row. This is my most beautiful work here. I think solutions team should be proud of what I've got here. They don't have to say it. I know in their hearts they are.
Absolutely. Always
so
proud.
oh, so proud. So this is, and so we added a subdialog flow. That's pretty straightforward. In our subdialog flow, we have two inputs and outputs. We've got an account comes in, we named it selected record, and an account comes out on the change data path named edited record. So we take that string of the email address, just like we did for that entity action flow we just showed, Alex, and we said, pass it, show it on the form, but take whatever is on the form and map it to the email address on the record that sort of flows through this form step. And then we pass it back out here. So that flows pretty straightforward. If we look at our inputs, we know we have an account, we know our repeater is of an account, and we know that form data here means account, which we can see in the top here. So if we name the input form data and we name the output form data, we can take the object in, modify it, and send it back out. And because we're going through that, I guess it's because we're going through the change data path, the repeater is able to interpret that as requiring an update. So this is actually an in-memory update so far. You still have to save this change after the form is complete.
Correct.
Like if I restart this, it'll come back as admin@decisions.com. Well, restart services, not the flow.
Yeah, that button at the end has to do the actual saving.
Exactly right. Yep.
That is working fine. And in the database, I see that the data is there, but it just did not show in the repeater, in the data repeater. So do that little inflow editing. Sorry, that subflow that you hit when you edit this record. Are you passing the entire list?
No, just a single one.
Just a single one.
Single record in.
Yeah, and what does it return then?
It returns a single account as well.
Edited account, but that account is, among other things, Oh, no, sorry, that's a record. That's a single record.
Yeah,
Well,
correct. And
okay.
the reason it gets that context is because the subdialog button that we're in, is on the repeater itself. And here
Mhm.
under flow inputs and flow outputs, we've specified the data name to be that special form data name here. So that the workflow engine interprets form data as an account and then passes it into the flow. And it does the same thing on the return of that when that flow sends that account to its end step.
And form data is the name of your data repeater.
Form data is the special name. So if we look here, our data repeater has to be of a type. So under form data, we select the input type. And then form data is a special name. It's an abstract name, but the properties of it are the actual properties of the type we have on the repeater.
Okay.
But it is an abstract name. So we could have another data repeater of a folder or a comment, and we would build it the same way, but email address wouldn't exist. It would be some other property name.
I see an enhancement request here to get all this done in a manner that is dumb proof, so people like me can do it, because this is probably a common thing that people may want to do, right? Edit
Oh,
the
for sure.
recording. And this trick is, I'm not going to say obscure, but I would not have thought of it. But this is good. Thank you.
Yeah, so Liam, I think specifically, I'd love to have a document specific to this piece submitted into the queue. Good, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we could, I think to Alex's point, we can't make it easier overnight, but we can definitely have it well documented.
Yeah, if it is documented, one
I'm
can
sure it's
find
not.
it. It might be, but if it is, it's varied because I could not find it in the docs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Let's go to question number 3, sir. Unless, of course, any questions from anyone else so far yet? Carlos, do you have anything that you'd like us to answer for you? If so, use the raise hand feature. I don't know he does, and if he doesn't, we'll just move on to your next question, Alex. But we'll give him a chance here in case he's got some questions and has some places to be. All right, I will take that as a polite no. All right, question 3. Assume I have a dashboard with a pie chart and a report area. The pie chart shows the total number of orders in each state. Assume that there are 3 possible states. Can I change the record shown in the report area by clicking on the appropriate slice of the pie? Can I use just one report that accepts a filter parameter, in this case, the order state, instead of me writing 3 reports? Yes, you can use filters here. So let's get in a testable state here. I will use, what's the easiest way to do this? I'll use these process folders. I'm sorry?
Any folder that you have already with records would do.
So I'm going to run a couple of these process folders here, and let's build a dashboard on our data folder here and see what we can do. So first things first is let's build a generic report. I'm going to use my test1 type here for my report. So I'll come into the report and I will search for test1. I'll find test1 and I'll add it. And now what I care about is entity name. And let's use state. Now we should have started for everything. So that's fine. Let's save this. Let's go complete one of those things just to give us some different states. ASDF. So if I refresh my preview, one of these should be, well, that would have been nice if it set itself to completed. Let's edit our flow slightly here. And let's find set state. And we'll drop one here. And this will be, in progress.
Okay, we'll just those two are enough.
And we'll just say completed here. And let me run 1 or 2 more of these just to get us some different state data to play with here. Okay. All right, so I should have 5 now with completed. All right, great. So we can create a pie chart by creating a view, and to get that to occur, we need to create a grouping. to group on. So I'm gonna come to state and I'm gonna group. Now that I've grouped, I can add a pie chart by clicking add pie. And I'll say, all processes by state or something. Okay. All right, and I'll get this pie chart here. Okay, wonderful. So there's our pie chart. So let's go ahead and save this. And then the next thing is let's build a page. So I'm gonna create a report. Click page, default page, create. And then on the right-hand side, I'll put a report viewer. And on the report viewer, I'll go pick the report I added called report 1. And then under behavior, I will come and I will, nope, not behavior. Under view, I'll come and default view, I'll change from designer settings to charts. So this will default itself to its chart view, not its data view. I will save and close this. I'll come to my data folder and right click and say manage page dashboard, add page dashboard. Select the page I just built, rename it to like details or something, and click OK. Now, if I come back to data, I have a dashboard showing my data currently. So your first question is, can I change the record shown in the area by clicking into the appropriate slice? So go ahead.
We're missing in the dashboard, put it to the left, the report view, which will show all the 5 records that you have now. Right? When you click on the yellow, that only the 3 that are in started will show in that report.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, you have? What do you do? Just go.
Oh, does this give you what you needed, or do you have another question?
Well, I thought to have in the dashboard, in the same dashboard, to the left of that little pie chart, a report view that shows record by record, right? And what I wanted to do is to use the slices of the pie chart as buttons that when I click on them, it filters what I'm seeing. I see that you're.
I see.
I did not know that.
Don't think we can do that, Corey, can we? If I click this, it could take the state as a send folder. I don't think we can do that.
You know,
Please,
that we can
not
do
on
with tiles.
Yeah, with tiles for sure.
Yeah, and I can filter the content of the report area by invoking the report with a different filter, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So
you can do it the other way. You can definitely do it the other way. Like you could have the report change based, you could have the chart change based on the row you select in the report. But you can't go the other way, right, Corey? You can't do, I don't think you can do pie slice to filter change on a dependent report.
Unfortunately, no.
You can click into it and see the details here. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think you can currently, you can, like you did mention, Alex, you can do that with, you can do that with a
tiles.
Thank you, Corey. Yeah, you can definitely use tiles to swap reports out.
Tiles or a flow run part so that you have, instead of a tile, you have a form. Unless that's what you are meaning, Will.
Tiles. Say that again, Corey. I'm sorry.
Were you with tiles? Were you talking about form tiles or regular tiles?
I was thinking report selection bus change on a normal tile to swap the review the report definition out on the report viewer. Is that the right way to say that? Probably, yeah.
And I've done it with normal tiles. The ones that you just have a counter. It will say start at 3. I click on that, and it shows me on the left-hand side only the ones that are started, right? Because it will be a different report that I'm running truly, and I'm plastering it on that area. But
yeah, it is a unique report each time. Yeah.
What I was thinking is maybe with a diagram tile, if there's such a thing, that I could put a pie and do the same thing. But I don't know whether that is even, if it is not a functional thing,
Yeah, you can't access the slices of the pie in the diagram tile. You could have the whole diagram tile itself be a button, but you can't like interact with the individual pie slices to get them to be buttons.
Okay, but
unfortunately,
when you click on the current pie, you did pop up a list.
Correct.
Of reports. Sorry, those
yep.
folders.
And these have all the actions you've defined on your normal thing. So this would be the normal way. You would click, you use the pop-up, you drill into the selected state by clicking in and then interact in the pop-up using whatever specific custom action set you've built for your process.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, that's as good as it gets. It's much better than where I was before.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
And Alex, you got anything else today?
I probably have, but let's give others an opportunity. I don't want to hoard a meeting. By the way, this is the most useful part of my day, guys.
Oh, happy to help.
This is the best use of my time.
Yeah, no, please. We would just all we want is more people. So help us find a way to convince more people to attend these. I think these are our goal is to build a nice little community here with these sort of things. So, all right, Carlos, we do have a question here. Wonderful. I have some images loaded as individual files inside of a case entity. That would be, what would be the method to go through the case entity and get the identity of those images in terms of file reference? The purpose is to load them later in document viewer from the file reference data directly. You should be able to do that just using a fetch entities step. Now, our case and our process folder for this purpose are identical. So I'm going to just use this process folder I just created. But I have in data here, I have these folders, and I can click in, and I have a process view. You'll have a case view, but really this is just a folder. So for purposes of our discussion here, these are equivalent data objects, and we can ignore case versus process folder here. So you have and so you have some file references that have been added as, so let's edit, I'm going to edit my flow really quickly. I'm going to add a form here. On that form, I'm going to add a multi-file upload and a button. This will be called new files. I'll change the type from file data to file reference, right? That'll allow me to upload files when I create a new thing. And then I'll come under, I'm just trying to get testable here so we can see flow management, data, add file references to folder. And I'll go set a process folder after my form, add file references to folder. The folder ID I'll select as the process folder ID. Here would be your case folder. And file references will be new files from my form. Okay, I'm going to close this and run it normally. So come back in, right click, run flow. And I'm going to select files from my local here. And do I have any? I've got to have some image files, right? There you go. There's an image file. I don't know what that is. And there you go. There's 2 image files. And now if I look at that, if I come in, I should see WF7 is the one I just created. And I look and I can see the 2 files loaded here. So I've got 2 file references. If I look at data view, I can see 2 file reference entities in my folder. So if I need to access those later, I'm going to build an action to show those in a I think our image gallery control, or I guess I could do it in document viewer. Let's do it in document viewer. User action, create user action. This will be called view images. And I'm just going to use a fetch entities step here, which for some reason doesn't show up in this flow as a favorite. Maybe I just, oh, interesting. Anyone else seen that on 617? If so, that's kind of dumb. File reference entity is going to be my data type here. And now I know if a file reference entity is an entity, and an entity has a location in a folder, and that means I can use parent folder ID or entity folder ID to find that. So I'm gonna find the parent folder ID. Now this is an entity action flow, and it means it has the folder context by default, and it provides that to me very easily as this folder ID input. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I will now document viewer is I need to create a form. Excuse me. Let's create a form here. Call this doc viewer. And let's see, if I search for doc, I get document viewer. So what I'll have is what I'm going to do is have a button. This will be called view next doc. Document viewer here will be named current doc. And the input type is going to be file reference. Go ahead and save this. And because I can have a list here, I'll use a for each step, which again doesn't show oddly. For each step. So results for each, next to form back to for each. This will let me cycle through all my docs in our document viewer. I'm not saying this is the most graceful UI, but this will work for our purposes here. And then I've got my fetch entity step. This should be fully configured. I'll pass the entity results to my for each step. So this is entity results. I'll get an output of an item. A single file reference entity is item, and I'll come to form, select from flow, and here it'll be item file reference is my input. And I'll go ahead and actually, let me make my no results path connect to the end. Or yeah, no results path to the end. Let me save this. Come back to my folder here. Let me right click on 7. I can click view images. And now I can see my documents and cycle through my documents. So really all I'm doing here, besides some of that trickery with the for each step, is I just know that a file reference entity is a file and an entity sort of smashed together. And because it's an entity, I can use a fetch entity step to find it. So I use a fetch entity step whose type was file reference entity. And I just specified the parent folder ID. And I got that for free because of the entity action flow. Now you could do this in a normal flow. You would just have to figure out I just maybe use another fetch entity step and fetch the folder by some property. Right, there might be some more complexity there to find if you need to do this in a non-entity action flow. But either way, if you can build the flow logic to find your parent folder ID, you can feed that folder ID into a fetch entity step with file reference entity as a type, and then you can show those in a document viewer.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions about the scenario I just walked through?
No, it's clear. I think maybe I have many images that I didn't charge it like file reference in the beginning. I cannot transform that. Not it's the images I have inside the case entities.
Okay.
Can I transform those images, or I have to charge again?
What are they currently saved as? You can tell if you click into one of your cases. I'm going to go into that case I just created. If you click into your case, there's a process data view, and on the right hand side you'll see type. Can you tell? I can help you understand what to do here if I can know the type of image.
Okay, and okay, and regarding it, the type of file, I can transform it.
You might not even need to. We might just change the approach I offered here. A file reference entity is one of many file options you can use. So if it's a document, we could do the same pattern just using documents instead of file reference entities. There's no requirement that you modify them.
Tell me something. When you have the file reference entity, you know that it has 4 fields.
Mm-hmm.
You have to declare each one of those fields to make the image appear in the document viewer.
4 fields. I'm not sure what you mean by
Which is size, file name, time, date time, and one more else. Each one of those names and fields you have clear in the input of the document viewer to show it.
No, not at all. You just, in my example here, if I look at that flow, well, if I edit my form and I look at document viewer, you can change the input type. And there's 3 options here. I can say this is a document. I'm sorry, say that again.
Sorry, and this is enough. Only to say,
correct.
Say file reference, and if you work with the data repeater, it's the same.
Yep,
file
exactly.
Be enough. Okay.
Yeah, it all depends on how the image is stored. So if it's in a data repeater, it just depends on how you access it. Like if is it a file reference, is it a file data array, or a link to a document, right? You could imagine having, we looked at, you know, if we looked at like the example we built for Alex here, data repeater, right? In this user control, we could edit this record. I could add like what I could do, I can't do that, but you could have another sub dialog button here that takes in like document ID or some ID, passes it into a sub dialog flow like we showed for this edit record step. And then that sub dialog flow has a document viewer in it. And then in that flow, you just need to figure out how to fetch the right type of file object in decisions, which is what we were doing in this view images flow. So this could absolutely be like a sub dialog. In fact, let me just add this as, I won't set it up fully, but just to give you an idea so you can actually see something. I'm going to add a sub dialog flow here, not data action. And I'll just name this thing, you know, view files. I'll have to create a new sub dialog flow, but I'm going to put my sub flow in. Oh, I can't. It's an entity action. Never mind. Disregard. That's going to be harder to do than I expected. But in the same way this record gets access to this selected record here using our input, we could pass in, you know, the document ID or the process folder ID or the file reference ID, and then use that ID to fetch it either from its parent folder or fetch it directly itself. But whatever we set it to, whatever the document type we're dealing with, it drives that determines how we need to set up our document viewer here. So whichever type it is, and these are really the only 3 you can deal with in decisions, we just make sure the document viewer is configured appropriately.
Perfect. Okay.
Any other questions about that?
I'll have to try. I think it's clear.
Okay. Yeah. Happy to help further as needed. Please let us know.
Okay.
All right. So I don't see any other questions. Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask about? Okay. Well, guys, appreciate the questions, and you guys have a great afternoon. Sabrina, who's up tomorrow? Is it Borny?
Tomorrow it will be Morgan Russell and Brendan Nolan.
Morgan and Brendan are up. All right, wonderful. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.